Hello and welcome back to the Guns and Glory show. I've got an Hogs Titan free flight glider. I finally found one. They don't make these anymore. I used to get them anywhere for like 13 bucks. I found that on eBay for 70 plus shipping. It was almost 100. We have a starting weight of 7.5 ounces or 215 grams. Working on the Hogs Titan FPV project today. Wanted to go over the electronics that were going on board the aircraft. We've got a Frisky TDR-10 receiver, an Arrows Vector balance controller that I got out of the Arrows Prodigy. It's switched to the flight timer. I've got a 3S 2200 milliamp hour battery, a pair of 30 amp speed controllers, a pair of 2212 1400 kilovolt motors, 2 master air screw 3-bladed props, 4 servos, just the Metal Gear ones from Amazon, a Y connector for the ailerons. These 2 servos represent the gimbal with the pin and the tilt. Whenever you're running 2 or more motors, the speed controls aren't going to work if you plug them both into the receiver. What you have to do is plug one of them in normally using a Y cable and then remove the red wire from the other one. I like to just pull the clip out with the original connector intact and then insulate it. That way I can put it back if I want to. Whenever you're setting up a twin on an airplane, make sure you set the propellers up so that one rotates in one direction and the other rotates in the opposite direction, because when you add throttle, if they're turning in the same direction, it's going to want to pull the airplane in the direction of that rotation. Whenever you're going to be working with an airplane, take the propellers off of it. But we've got these on here for demonstration so you can see what we're doing. Always use a kill switch. Notice both of these are rotating counterclockwise. If I want to change that rotation, I disarm, unplug the system,
telemetry lost,
and you can take any of the 3 wires, unplug any of the 2, I should say, and swap them. That will change the direction of the rotation. You can apply power, rearm, and then let it clear. And then you will have changed the direction of the rotation of that motor. Now, if we want to remove the prop, that's very easy. Again, disconnect from power, disarm. I like to use one of these little screwdrivers. There will be a hole in that hub. Hold the prop, just turn it counterclockwise. It'll come off. It's that easy to do to avoid cutting your fingers up. I had my goggles on trying to launch the Hogs Prodigy, or the Arrows Prodigy, and it was really hard to see, so I had the throttle cut. And when I was holding the airplane and I hit the throttle arm switch, the prop started and put 10 little slices into my thumb. Hurt like crazy and it bled a lot. It was kind of funny. The first thing you want to do when you start working on one of these airplanes, grab some 220 grit sandpaper. You want to start taking care of these seams, get everything nice and even. Where they mold together, there's often a line, there's a seam. That'll come right out. Reduces drag, makes the airplane look a lot nicer. When you get one like this has got a big step in it, because this side of the mold was sitting higher than that one. Those take a couple of minutes to get through. They're not too bad. You got to remember though, you don't want to sand that flat and make a little edge. You want to just round that back over so it looks natural. I'll just do a little bit of this. It doesn't take very long at all to get through. But if you spend a half an hour on the airplane, you'll be glad you did when you're done. that looks a lot better. Now don't be tempted to grab the filler putty. I need to get some more of this, but this works really good for styrofoam. It's sandable, it's very lightweight, it's non-toxic. And it's harder than the styrofoam, which is why you don't want to put it on right now, because if you're going to run a hot wire cutter through it, it's going to hang you up a little bit. Otherwise, I'd want to fill in all these letters. I'll do that later. Along with any other nicks and dings. As you're going along, like if you put a servo wire down through, you might do it little bit by little bit. That helps to keep things calmed down so it doesn't turn into a rat's nest on you. At this point, before you cut or glue anything, find and mark the center of gravity. One tool that you're going to want to get is a hot wire cutter if you're going to be playing with these airplanes. It's got a couple of different tips, like this sword thing. There's a little notch in here with a keyway. And the bow. Got extra wire too. Absolutely have to have one of these. But before you use it, you need to set up your cut. Absolutely do that every time, or you're going to make a mess out of your stuff. Keep different pieces of wood around, popsicle sticks, just leftovers. Skewer sticks are more for reinforcement because they're round, but they do work. I want to cut that cockpit area out of there, so I need to make a guide for that wire. Very carefully, I'm going to build that all the way around there on both sides of it so that that has something to ride on. However, before I do that, if I'm going to take this big of a chunk out, this is going to be kind of thin. So I need to add some reinforcements before I take that off of there. That way I can use the strength of it. I love to use these skewer sticks. That one's got some drywall compound on it. And a drill bit. I think this is like about a 3/16. Just looking at it. You want that to be smaller than the stick. You want to eyeball that like you're looking down a gun sight or something. Decide whether you want 1, 2, or 3, or whatever you want. I'm going to run 2. I want them to be in about there on each side. Start it in, get a nice square cut. I want to keep it low enough below what's going to be the floor in there so that it doesn't get in the way of the floor later. Put one end on the other side as well. You don't have to glue these in. They'll stay. But you're probably going to want to grab something to push them with. And then if it cracks like that, that's it. I try to go in a little bit farther, but I'll just cut that off with some diagonals. Fill in that hole later. Grab the other one. Picked up the wrong stick. Do the same thing. Find the hole. Shove it in and back it up with something. That's as much as I want. That's good enough. And then you can take that Model Light filler. I bet I can get enough out of there to do this. There we go. It doesn't shrink very much, which is good. Makes it easier to use. We'll go ahead and bury that. And in a couple hours when it's dried up, come and sand it out. At this point, I want to break away from their particular mold lines because I want a dashboard in there for the instrument panel. So I'm going to wind up coming straight into it, straight down like this with the wire. And although paper isn't really great for this because the wire is hot, it'll work. Now I want to go from that point to the same point over here. So I'm going to sight down through that again. Try to keep that square with the thing rocking around like a canoe. That can be a little stinker, but I want that to look right. So I'm going to take a few minutes and get that right. Now that I've got that lined up, I'm going to go over it with several layers of tape. Very carefully getting one exactly on top of the other. You only need to stick this down on this side. So if you try to stick the whole thing down, it'll start to pleat. You don't want that. But several layers of this will work. I prefer having a stick. You'll sometimes want to make little precision cuts in little pieces. Make a left and a right when you do something like that. This right here is a very difficult area to get a good cut on. You'll probably wind up sanding it in. But start like this, working your way in, little bit by little bit. Now these two boards are actually trying to go like this, which puts the outside edge higher than if you just had your inside edge parallel to that. So we want to push those down just a little bit, and we'll try to hit that. I'm going to put a couple of more layers on this. One thing to remember when you're bringing your wire through, you need to figure out what direction you want to go. We have to go this way, because if you don't, you're going to take that wire and it's going to get stuck. So plan for that. Make sure your wire is warm. And this is going to be kind of tricky because of this entrance. We'll probably have to sand some of that out, but we'll do the best we can. Don't rush it, especially when you're trying to do an outside corner like that. That's very difficult. I wanted to go straight down into that dashboard area, but I'm not going to be able to, so we'll pull it up and out. It's not bad. A little raggedy, but for what we just did, not bad. You can sand it up. Pull your tape back off. Any pieces of wood. I'm actually very, very happy with the way that turned out. Try not to dig into the styrofoam with your fingernails when you're taking the tape off. I'll fill it in later, but why chop it up? See, that'll make a nice little dashboard. The canopy. I'll have to be careful, it's a little thin up here, but I'm actually quite thrilled with that. When you're getting ready to cut the ailerons, and make sure you bind these wings together and pay attention to your corners to make sure these things are even. This is a very important step to make sure you get that right. Got the wings bound together and the ailerons marked out. Very carefully, try to make sure everything's nice and square before you make your cut. Let's give this a go. I prefer using wood on everything, but we'll try tape. and see how that works out. You want to put a little bit of downward pressure on it to keep it on the surface of the edge of that tape, but you don't want to cut through the tape. As long as you keep moving, it won't really have time to. Be gentle. Before anything gets confused, mark them. I forgot to film cutting the elevator out of the horizontal stabilizer. However, you'll notice that this piece is going to be in the way and keep it from rotating up. So we'll remove that. And this gave me a good place for the vertical stabilizer on the rudder. So we'll make that cut pretty close to there. And I might come across this way with it to make it look nicer. It'd be easier if I just cut it straight up, but it won't look right. Now, I should be able to use both sides of the bow to stabilize that. Just try to keep it square. And there we go. Now, the cut we just made will allow it to go up. Doesn't want to go down yet, so I'll just take that out of there. Just like this. Now right at the back of the horizontal stabilizer, where that meets, I put a little mark right there. And if we come up, we could cut that off right there and just make a little paddle out of it. Or I could come up like this, and then we'll come across it like that at the same angle as the leading edge of the vertical stabilizer. And that'll make the rudder and the elevator look like they belong on the same airplane. Unlike the Aztec from General Motors that look like the front end was designed by a different team than the rear. I think that'll make a nice looking rudder. And try to keep that square. I didn't set up a guide on both sides of this. If it's not very wide, you can get away with that. And try not to breathe that vapor comes off of these cuts. All right, geometry. Anyway, you get the idea. There's still enough strength into that where it's just not going to snap off. Now we've got all the preliminary cuts made. Got the canopy out of it, the ailerons, elevator, and the rudder. I think that's going to look really nice. The first thing I want to do right now is to reinforce this. It looks really fragile. I'm going to use a toothpick in there because that's going to be a little bit too much for it. Snap the one end off of there so you got something to push against. And effectively just run it in there. If you twist it a little bit, it helps. It should stiffen that quite a bit. And then I'm going to grab the drill and come down through here. I usually don't like to start running reinforcement sticks through an airplane until after I've got the servos and stuff in it. But in this case, we're going to make an exception to that rule. Be able to push that a little bit. There we go. Just to get enough for a filler. Stiffen that up a whole lot. Yeah, and that nose section too. Sorry, I kicked the tripod. That's really rigid now. I actually ran a third stick down through in there. Now I want to do the same thing to the horizontal stabilizers. Be very careful not to pop the drill out through the top or the bottom. Again, we're going to sight down very carefully. Just come out the top. Like I cautioned you not to. That's really, really hard not to do. I'm just going to go ahead and quit right there. Although I wanted to get that all the way in. If I push it any farther, it's going to come up through. That's unfortunate. But that's how that goes. We'll push that end in just a little bit. You'll never know I did that without watching the video. Kind of annoyed about it, but whatever. Same thing on this side. Get that started and carefully don't do what I just did. Shit. Excuse the French. Doing it once is annoying, doing it twice is embarrassing. Oh well. Make sure you put that far enough forward so that you don't run into it when you put your hinges in later. Yep, I'm annoyed. Whatever, it'll be fine. Now that I've got the enforcement sticks in the vertical and horizontal stabilizers and did what I told you guys not to do, I'm gonna go ahead and glue this thing in place. Just use some white Elmer's glue and let it set overnight. I have to apologize. I'm over here just having fun working on this little airplane and I forgot to film installing the rudder. Sorry, there's just nothing I can do about it. We can go on to installing the ailerons and the elevator though. I'd like to have 4 hinges in this elevator. And I had filmed this, but it was all like down here. So I'll do my best. This is just not my day to make a video, I guess. I've only been doing this for like 10 years. Anyhow, we got our elevator. We want a control horn on it. And I marked that with the X because we don't want that to interfere with the hinges, which I marked with a little dot in order to locate them. Once I located them, I used the edge of that book to strike a center line, and then I came over here with a marker and transferred the marks so that I know where I was at. Now I'm about to make a center line on those. Now I need to get this right in the center, and this thing varies in thickness quite a ways, so I guess I'll just have to measure at all 4 points. We got 12.1, so we'll measure down to 6. A little bit, and we'll have it. Alright, so about right there, you make a mark, and then come on the other side of it and make a mark, and you can split the difference between that. Since this is so wonky, I'll go ahead and, it's about 13, so 6.5. Get that right in the bottom and make a mark, go to the other side of it and make a mark. Do that 4 times and split the difference. I've actually got 2 marks here. You can't see them. I don't know if you can see them or not. It's a pretty good camera. But there are 2 distinct marks there. And you literally split the difference, cut in between the 2. Do that on all 4 of those. You'll get it in the middle. I'm going to attach these hinges with some 5-minute epoxy. I always put them in first and then take them back out, and it opens the hole up a little bit. And you just want to put a little bit on like that. I don't usually like to take the epoxy much past halfway, or the super glue, because then you end up pushing it up against the hinges and that'll cause you problems. So just stick them in there one at a time, and if you see that there's a buildup of epoxy right on the edge before you push it all the way in, find a way to wipe it out, like at the edge of a screwdriver or something. Do that on all 4 of them. Get a little bit in them holes, that helps. The important thing is try to not to make it a mess and to glue your hinges, you know, stiff. That one's a little bit stiff because I got a little bit on it, but I keep moving it. Nothing the servo won't handle, but it's better if you don't, because when the servo arm's got a push on it, it starts pushing the control surface all over the place if it's got a haul on it very hard. And plus it uses up your battery. The harder your servo's got to work, the less time they're going to last. There we go. I had enough extra on that one. Just probably going to finish that one. Yeah, a little more. Just on the other side though. All right. Yeah, no, I got too much on that one, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get that out of there before it gives me a problem. Back it out a little bit. Wipe that out of there. Okay, you can let that set up if you want to and then tackle the other side of it, but I'm not going to do that. Make sure I'm right side up here. Yep, okay. Always good to double check. You want to start those all in just a little bit. Just until that first row of holes kind of levels up like that. And then carefully put a little bit of epoxy down in there. I found that the CA glue doesn't really work well on styrofoam. It works great on EPO foam. That little slot, if it's open, try to pack a little bit in there. And be really careful when you close this up to not get the glue on the hinge point. I'll flip this thing upside down in a second and get the other side of it. It doesn't take much. Just a little bit. You got 4 of them on there for Pete's sake. You got 8 different points of epoxy holding this little styrofoam thing on the airplane. It's likely sufficient. And you'll probably get a little bit of glue on the corner. Wrong one. Or on the hinge. Now that one's a little cockeyed. I'll just reach in there and kind of straighten it out like that. And then push these forward evenly and carefully. And before you get to the edge of it, you do 2 things. You make sure, again, that you're not getting too much epoxy down in there like on that one. And then center it left and right. We're bound up over here and got a gap over here, so let's pull this over a little bit as we're coming in with it. There we go. Now, I didn't cut the bevel yet, which is okay on this kind of styrofoam because you just come in there with a razor blade and just trim it. It's not like a major operation. Yeah, that moves. That's centered up. It's not too high on one side or the other. And since we're using epoxy, that one's in a little too far, so we'll pull that out a little. Since we're using epoxy, leave this thing the heck alone until it's dry. When you're dealing with putting hinges on something like the aileron or even the elevator, you don't have to have the thing right in the center. On the elevator, I kept saying center because we're basically doing that manually, measuring from here to here and then marking it so that we could get there. You could do a 60-40 if you like doing math, which I don't, or any other dimension. It doesn't matter. It has to be even. You could put the hinge right up near the top and then bevel the bottom if you wanted to, and it would function just fine. It's just easier to put it right in the center. If you're going to do this, get a jig and use it whenever you possibly can, because that accomplishes that for you. Make sure you're right side up. If you're going to cut on that side like this, cut on that side like that, and you'll be at the same distance apart on both pieces. Another thing to consider is how many hinges are you going to use and what location are they going to be in, what kind of materials are we using. This is a pretty flexible, non-rigid piece of material, so I don't think 2 is a good idea. We'll try 3, see what 3 looks like. Yeah, still that's a little bit thin in my opinion. So how about 4? We'll put 4 on it. See what you think of 4. I'd be happy with 4, but I got a whole pile of hinges and they're cheap, so I'm actually gonna put 5 of them on it. And we'll just space those out evenly. And make a mark right where we think we want them. Yeah, I think that's overkill, but this is something that it doesn't want to hold its own rigidity. I mean, it's styrofoam, you could just snap it. So I like 5. We'll get it lined up like that. This says pretty good. And put a dot for each of those for the center, and then 1 on each side. That way we know about how wide to go. There we go. Now, take the other surface, or the other side of the surface, center it up, and then make your marks like that. And the same thing, you could make a line. I kind of like that. I'm going to start doing that from now on. That works better. Make a line on the 2 sides and a dot in the center. See, we learned something. And now we know how far wide to make our slots. Make that with the jig. And then everything is supposed to line up. Check it, and check it over and over and over again. That's important. You can line it up. Make sure you can see that. Okay, good. And a plunge cut will work. And then just slide it. Make sure you don't come across and cut the side of your hand or your fingers. You will not be happy. Just make sure you're keeping the top edge of that thing flush with the top of that wing when you're making your cut. I'm going to go put another new blade in this thing and do this on all 10 slots. You get all 5 of those in there, and if they line up like this, I'm pretty well confident you got it right. Now before you put any glue anywhere, carefully work these hinges in. I'm going to dry fit them one time. You got one of them where it was cockeyed. Push it with the dull side of the blade to straighten it up so you don't cut it in half. There we go. Carefully make that seat the first time. You can see how well that lines those up on top after using the using that jig down there. All right, at this point, pop this back out. Again, carefully. And I've got to mix up some more epoxy real quick. We'll set these in there like that, put a little bit on each, and just like the horizontal stabilizer on both sides, we'll install that, keep the glue off the hinges. And then once it sets, since there's all 5 of these, I'll let that set and then I'll pull them all out and re-glue them. Now we want to free this wing up. I already took one little pass through here to get things started. You just want to cut a little bevel. You're aiming for the center. You're aiming for the center of the wing with the tip of the blade. And once again, I was off screen when I was doing this step. I almost decided not to upload the video at all because I keep screwing up, but I told people I was going to do it. And that's usually how that goes. Do the same thing on the back side and loosen it up. That hinge, unfortunately, it moves, but it's a little bit stiff. It's just a matter of working the joint until it comes free. All the control surfaces are mounted, and we've got everything freed up, ready to put the electronics into the airplane. The electronics for the Hogs Titan, 11 3/4 ounce. Add the battery, 1500. Let's see, a pound and a half an ounce. I'll toss some props on there just because. A pound and an ounce. And the metric, let's see, 490. Lose the props, 470. And the battery, it takes us down to 335. Thought I would weigh out the electronics for the Hogs Titan, minus the FPV system. 11 3/4 ounce. I've got a 1500 3C battery, a pound and a half an ounce, and heck with it, the props are sitting here. A pound and an ounce. Metric, 490 grams. Without the props, 470 grams. Without that battery, 335 grams. I haven't looked at this project in months. It is now July 5th, 2025. So I don't remember in this video what I've got for motor mounts started yet. I had several ideas in mind. I had a second Arrows Prodigy, so now I have 2 motors and 2 motor mounts. So I figured I'd come back at this project like I haven't seen it before. And I've made a line that's square with the cord line, or even with the cord line. And then this, I've created a line that's parallel to the center of the fuselage so that the motor lines up straight in line with the fuselage. And I'll need to sight down this line to get it level this way. So what I've got here is a little pocket that does just exactly that. If anything, the prop is up a little bit, so when you add power, it'll come up a little bit. And then I've added this little piece of plywood, flush mount. I'll glue that in place, and now I've got a way to bolt this motor down to the wing. I decided to put a thin layer of clear epoxy in there, not only to help level it, but mostly to strengthen it. Let's say that'll hold it. A couple of nuts and bolts and washers, and I'll just fill that in and contour it. I got the first layer of that filler in. It's too thick to put any more in it before sanding it out. And I filled up that little gap in the bottom as well. Once it's dried that much, probably a day or two, then I'll go ahead and sand it and put a skim coat on to finish it. That turned out very well. Props are angled up just a hair and inward just a hair to help it with stability. Next thing that needs to happen is to install the speed control. I got a 1/2 inch drill bit, warmed it up with a propane torch, and punched the hole through the wing to feed the wires through. Now I've got to go grab the transmitter and a receiver and make sure my propeller rotation is correct. Just run the wires along the bottom side of the wing and then fill it back up. A couple of toothpicks in there to pin them down. I had to change out those speed controls. The ones that came out of the Prodigy aircraft didn't start the motors at the same time, and that'll screw you up really bad on takeoff and landing. I very carefully lined them up with the fuselage and made a couple of marks. Oops. I'm gonna have to put a compartment right here to house those, as well as the receiver and whatever else we need up there. And since I'm not gonna have them in the airflow, I'll have to put airflow through that little cabin. I've got this compartment marked out, and I left enough material behind it and in front of it and below it so that there's some strength here. Because you'll sacrifice that when you're doing something like this. There's a mosquito in here. Not for very long. Cellophane powered failure is about to die. That was easy. That turned out okay. I had a little bobble right there because of that doggone bug, but he won't do that again. Cut a little access hole for your wires and the speed control. Feed those through, and then we can glue these two wings in place. Add a lot of strength to this airplane. I'll have to cut a little bit of a relief to get these things to lay down. I'll have to keep them separate so they don't short circuit, and then figure out how to get some airflow through this section. Speed controls are both nestled in there pretty well. Now I'll put the epoxy on the wings. When I bonded the wings to the fuselage, I took some extra clear epoxy and smeared it on the wing and on the fuselage, about a 1/2 inch wide, top and bottom, on both sides to add strength to it. And then I put a thin layer of clear epoxy over that filler putty for strength. Make sure that that wouldn't go anywhere. And I've got a little piece of plywood that'll go in between these two speed controls. I'm gonna probably put a vent on each side, bring air into this compartment, and then put an exhaust vent of some kind on the back of it. Make sure that those stay cool. I warmed up a drill bit and went in through there and came out in the center on both sides. And the same thing in the rear, into the center on both sides. I'll have to put a scoop here to catch the air and concentrate it, or it'll just flow right by it. But that should keep those speed controls nice and cool. I want to put the battery in the back as a counterweight for the camera unit in the front. And I'd like to strengthen that fuselage up back there a little bit, so I'm going to put a stick in here about that location on both sides. And the tricky part is to make sure you've got enough foam in here to make it worth the strength, and yet you've got enough room to cut the slot for the battery. I think we go into it right about there, will be fine. A little higher. Come on. Sure how far down in there we can get those, but we'll give it a shot and see what we get. Yeah, that ought to get it. There. That'll work. Okay, I put a piece of masking tape on the sword and I cut the slot for the battery all the way around and did the filament. Now I gotta figure out how to get that chunk out of there and replace it with the battery. After I got that dug out of there, basically just with a screwdriver, that's a nice fit. And we'll run the wires through a little tunnel that I haven't made yet. I'll probably just leave it open like that so that I can pull it out of there and charge it. And after watching that flex, I'm going to put one of these right up through there under the battery. So I need to connect 2 speed controls to the battery. And the battery has to be able to be removable. So, with the limited space that I have here, I'm not going to be able to use a Y connector because we're not stuffing all that into that hole. I haven't even hollowed out the cap yet. So I think I'll clip this one here and then attach it here, and this will be long enough to go on out of there so that you can charge that battery. I got that set in there nicely, and this will travel back and forth once connected. Now I'm going to cut a tunnel through that so that has a place to go back and forth in, and then glue it back into place. Well, I got to get these 2 wires up here for the receiver that will be here. Then I can glue it into place, and that'll put the strength back in the airplane. I've made a little compartment for the receiver. Just sitting there just about like that, and made enough room for the wires to go in beside it. Now the altimeter and the pan tilt wires need to come through this tunnel, and I have to hollow this section out to make more room for the camera. That tucked in there really nicely, and I got plenty of room for the aileron, elevator, and rudder wires to come. And I've got this thing so it'll sit in there pretty well. However, I forgot the battery wire, and I don't want to tear that all up, so I guess I'll just go straight down through it, through the back, and then up through the bottom. The 2 aileron servos are in place, and I've added extension wires to them so that they'll actually reach the receiver. I guess I'll show the installation of the rudder or the elevator servo. And for a second there, I wasn't sure if I was going to finish this thing or not, because it almost balances right now without the camera in it. And by the time I get a tail weight in it to counteract that camera, it's going to be pretty heavy. Regardless, I've got the ailerons installed, well, the servos, and I've got the power wire run through this way, and I'll have to bring the rudder and elevator servo wires on this side and then into the receiver bay on the top. So I guess I'll get to install the rudder and the elevator servos at this time. Almost forgot. I've got the altimeter tucked right in that slot. Fits between the receiver and the camera pretty nicely. You're going to run a wire through this thing. First thing you need to do is to figure out where it goes and if it's going to interfere with anything else. So we're going to go through that hole into the receiver bay, and that'll be mounted in the fuselage back here. So we're going to come through this area here and into the hole. You want to make sure you leave enough room for the rudder, which will come around this side, and we'll need to go between there and into that same hole. Pretty straightforward. You just heat that screwdriver or something up and run the blade right down through there rather quickly. And that's all you need to do. You just run the line in there and fill it up with putty when it shows up here late next week. And make sure you read the label so you don't put the rudder in the elevator slot. Want to install the servo with some hot glue, just about like that, and same thing with that wire. Use the hot glue to tie that down. Try to keep that servo square with the elevator, and just put a dot of glue every couple inches all the way down. Make sure you keep everything below flush. That'd be the top surface. That way you can fill it and sand it gently. I almost fell. Let's cut the slot for the wire for the rudder servo, and then I'll install that rudder servo. I guess I'll film that. Yeah, we'll warm that back up and finish the cut. Using the styro sword and a depth stop that I made with a screw because I lost the worm screw, we'll get this rudder servo in place. And this will probably just go all the way through the other side of the rudder, but that's okay. Oops. Vertical stabilizer. My bad. Rudder's that thing. There is a difference, kind of like a magazine and a clip. I'll get that screwdriver, warm that up, and then finish this little slot. Yeah, we just use that, pop that out of there while those are cold. You get the idea. Cool. I thought we were going to go through the other side of that, and we didn't. That's great. Looks better and stronger. Well, yeah, cutting these slots, putting a wire in there, and then put filler in there is probably going to make it stronger overall. Real easy to go too deep too quickly with that. Ouch, that's quite warm. And again, just every couple inches, a little dot there. And walk that cable all the way back through that slot. I'm going to hold that until it cools off, until you get into the receiver bay up front. I just figured this out. Put a dot there, and then put the wire on it. And then push it down with something. That works. There. And again, put the dot and then push the wire into it. And again, I'm going to have to just hold that still for a minute. With all the wires run and tucked into that little receiver bay, it's a good time to glue that little cap back on, and we can secure the antenna wires at this time. Try not to glue the receiver or anything important like the wires, because you might want to get them out later. This is basically, I hope I'm not repeating myself here, but this is basically made out of the beer cooler, and if it hits the ground at like 60 miles an hour, it is going to be confetti. So let's put this T antenna up front, and those two down in the corners. All right, just like that. We'll let them set up. I'll tie those down later, and that should hold that one right there quite neatly. Try to center it up a little bit. And grab your favorite countertop cleaner like Fantastic or Awesome, and kind of clean this airplane up a little bit. Lots of fingerprints. Now I hate wasting epoxy, so I'm going to take what I have here, which is way too much, and I'm going to strengthen this area on both sides of the horizontal and vertical stabilizers, where I'm going to put those control horns for the servos. Just put a layer on it. It does a lot. Horizontal and vertical stabilizer, elevator and rudder, doggone it. Hopefully somebody's laughing at me right now. Kinda ought to be. Let's put some wheels on this thing. I've had that around for about 25 years or better. You make sure you line up the wheel with the fuselage and not necessarily the mount, because the mount is a little bit twisted. That's okay. And once you get it a rough cut with your styro sword, pop that chunk out. Come really close to that support. That'll fit in there nicely. A little bit of epoxy. Again, just double check, make sure it's square. I might even set that flange down a little bit. Let's see. Do I have the room? Yeah, I got a little bit of room. Why not? Put a little piece of styrofoam on that, see if it's hot enough to work yet. Just about. I don't want to go down in there very far, just the thickness of that flange right there. Plus the arc of the fuselage. If you're still with this video, I sure appreciate it. Longer videos actually hurt the channel, even though they're meant to help others, because the way the algorithms work, audience retention is key, and longer videos don't do as well as shorts. Most of this channel is just for the subscribers. It's kind of an autobiography. It's a good reference for if I want to look up something later. You get the idea. I'll get it down there in a second. I had to take the grinder to that corner right there to clear that piece of wood. There. Epoxy that one in and it's done. I'll figure out what to do with the other two. Now before that completely sets up, set the wings level with something like these epoxy bottles. Worked out real well. And then let that cure with a little bit of weight on it and it'll square itself. I'm going to go ahead and glue that camera unit in there. If I add more structure to bolt it down, I'm just going to add more weight, and I am a long ways from buying another one of these airplanes because I've got to pay for all that. And right now with my credit card debt, because of this, I am really suffering. So, I'll just glue it there. After I finish the landing gear, because I gotta have it upside down so much. I don't want to mess up the antennas. I was just thinking, if I swap this 1500 out with a 2200, they're quite a bit longer. I can take that under the vertical stabilizer and get a little bit more weight to the rear of this aircraft, which it desperately needs. Something I did was I made sure that the aileron servos were behind the center of gravity. And having the elevator and rudder servos back there help a lot too. You got to figure out where these wheels need to go. You don't want them in front of the center of gravity or the thing's just going to tip. It won't sit there. So you want it behind the center of gravity, and luckily for me, we need more weight to the rear of this bird. I'm thinking we'll set it right about there, and I've got a carbon fiber axle, 5 millimeters. We'll put that right about there. Actually, if I could just set that there and keep it in that spot, we'll have it. Now we just got to figure out how to do that. Well, I was just thinking about something. I might be able to move that back and just go right through the fuselage with the axle shaft. I better check the prop clearance first to make sure that's still going to work out. Let's see here. Oh, tail strikes a little, but that's not a problem. You can just shave that off. You got enough room if it's level, but if you tip, either the wingtip's down to the ground, yeah, it's gonna strike there. And we're not even in the body yet, so we'll have to figure out something else. I figured it out. Just get a block and cut it off behind the center of gravity. Put a bevel on both sides of it for the airflow and round out this to meet the fuselage. We'll bore a hole through it for the axle and we'll have it. We'll also give us plenty of clearance for propeller tips, even if your wingtip is on the ground. And instead of making the inside that round, I'll just put some sandpaper on that. We'll sand a little flat spot on there. Save myself some trouble. Head over to the drill press and I'll figure out where to bore a hole through that thing and make it nice and straight and square. Just wrap that block like that and get after it for a minute. Be careful of your wires. Okay, put the axle shaft, the longest one you can get, and then put the wheels on it, and you can tell the difference between the wheel and the wing on both sides, and then you can sand it until it's level. Once you're sure you got that block where you want it, make the axle the length that you want it on the one side, and make sure you've still got clearance between the wheel and that wing. And same thing with the other side. And figure out where you want to cut it off. You also have to figure out next how to hold the wheels right there. Once you get your length, your axle length figured out, get everything straight and square with it dry before you introduce any glue into it. And yeah, just like that. Let's figure out how to get these wheels to stay on the axle shaft. Just use 4 little washers and 4 of those little cotter pins, 1 on each side of each wheel. Now I've got a tiny little drill bit, and you're going to need a hole on each side of that wheel. Just like that. What we're going to wind up with is we'll have a cotter, and then a washer, and then the wheel and the washer and another cotter. You get the first cotter pin installed, then put in a washer, the round side towards the wheel, then put the wheel in. Same thing with the other washer, the round side towards the wheel. Then you can install the other cotter pin. Give it a little bit of a squeeze. We're not trying to change the shape, we're just trying to push it into the axle a little bit. And then you can grab that little tab, one of them is longer than the other, and roll it over. Same thing with the other side. It would help a lot if I could see that. I haven't got my glasses on. I just know what's supposed to be there. When you're doing something like this, always start with the shortest side and then work from your outside to the inside. Because on the opposite end, you're going to want to start from the inside and work to the outside to get it straight with the other one. Then you'll cut off the excess. And if you do it right, you won't have very much side play at all with these, and they'll turn freely. Nice. All 3 of the wheels are in contact with the ground as well as the tail section. We're gonna have to trim that up, but that's okay. I saw it coming. We can just use the bow cutter to round that off. Hopefully I don't hit anything wooden. Yep, I did. No, I didn't. Just kind of felt like it. It's right there at the edge. It's okay. We'll just sand that up a little bit. Make that a little bit more round. There. We'll clear that up with some sandpaper. That tail is still pretty close to the ground. If I pull the front tire up a little bit, that'll help. I can't take a whole lot more off of the tail section because I'm going to run into the elevator servo. Might have to just put some bigger wheels in the back. That'll work. I got wheels. Not much of a takeoff roll, but it'll have to do. Let's get this camera module installed. I was going to just glue it in place with some hot glue because it's easy enough to remove, but it's not that complicated. That really won't add that much weight to the airplane to just put the mounts in it. So 2 screws right there into 2 pieces of wood that'll go across. They just need to be heavy enough to accept the screws, and there we'll have it. I got hold of a piece of 5mm tungsten rod, and I'm going to use it for a tail weight by replacing one of the wooden skewers that I've got in the tail section. That should help out a lot. That tungsten is amazingly heavy. Just that little length of that stuff is 1.5 ounces. I have also replaced this shaft with a tungsten shaft in the vertical stabilizer. Now we need to connect the servos to the control surfaces. We'll do the elevator. You start with the rod. It's got a Z-bend on it. You can buy a Z-bending tool. It's like a pair of pliers, or just get a set with them pre-bent. Eventually I'll get the tool. That winds up pointing right where you need to be. And you want this control horn to be in line with that thing. The 2 screws will go to a base plate. Put it right about there. Just push those through. Try to get them as straight as you can. And we'll finish flowing through the epoxy in the back with a bit. There. Those to feed down through there. And I don't reckon there's any way to be able to see that from where you're at, so let your imagination be your guide for a second here. First one's easy. Sometimes getting that second one to hook up can be a little bit of a challenge if they don't line up just right. If it don't, I'll pause this for a second. And be back. Okay, we got that started on both sides. You want to take the base plate and tighten it up to the point where it's flush with the surface of the control surface. I'll try not to be all day with this. So you're going to embed that base plate with the torque from these screws. Once it's level, you know you got it tight enough. No, once it's flush, you know you got it tight enough. I'll show it to you in a second. All right. I'll take the clevis, funny name for this thing, set it in there about like that, with the servo centered and the control surface centered. Find that gap right about there. And clip that. Insert that like so, center everything up, and tighten it down. I like to put a couple of dots of CA glue there. Make sure it won't move. And both of those base plates in place and mounted flush with the surface. I've got all of the control surfaces hooked up and functioning. And we also have flaps and spoilerons. We'll get this camera module mounted, put 2 boards in it, one in the front and one in the rear to pick up these 2 screw holes. That board was just part of a 2x4. I made a model of the additions for the cabin and this was left over. Let me go cut this. Set that right in the center over that mark. And then I'd like to mark both sides of it, but yeah, I guess we can. All right, now let me warm up the sword and we'll continue. Okay, I've got the depth stop set. It's kind of a tricky thing to say. Oh, it's kind of clumsy in here. I think it's loose. Yeah, it is. Oh well. You just need to go around the perimeter of it. Approximately the depth of that board. There you go. And take it all the way over the edge. Since you couldn't get there before, I was going to have to do that with the blade, but no, I don't. So we'll just pick that out of there. Just like that, and we'll warm up the hot glue gun. You don't want to get it ultra hot because you don't want to melt the airplane. Having that on the cool side is a better option. And just press that into place, setting right on one of those wooden spars, which is good. That front wheel is sitting on one too. There. Just wipe out the excess. Mark it. And then drill it. There, that's pretty good. Look at this thing tied up. Wow, nice shot. After I get the instrument panel made, I'll have to take that back out of here, make sure that thing is level and that the nuts and bolts are tight. And then you can put it back. Okay, let's get this thing wired up. First thing is to turn that as far as it can go. Just notice this needs to be longer now. Just kind of hold it there. And you can tuck it back in. Now you've got enough room. All right. The tilt is blue because of, well, looking up in the sky is blue. Seemed to make sense at the time, so I ran with it. And the pan, I didn't have a brown for the ground, so I went with gold. And I haven't painted this one yet because I had to change the tilt to the pan so that I had the range of motion that I needed because I crashed and broke everything. And then I had to put one of those cheap little $7 blue servos in for the tilt because I didn't need it to move very far. I did have to cut the bottom out of this part of the gimbal, but that's not a big deal. So the silver is no longer being used because that went to an RC switch on Ubik, which failed for some reason I don't know. So I changed it out with this manual switch. It turns the LED, the camera, and the fan on. And that tucks in with quite a bit of fuss and effort, but it does tuck in there. While editing the video, I noticed that I didn't say that I wasn't going to use that stabilization unit. I had it in the second Arrows Prodigy after I'd filmed the first half of this video, And I think that might have had something to do with why it wouldn't fly. So I decided not to put it in this thing. And that allowed me to use 2 different aileron wires going into the receiver instead of a Y cable, making the flaps and the spoilerons possible. I found my box of stickers. Got the airplane all decorated nicely. I haven't got the instrument panel done yet, but I did get the FAA numbers on the wing. I don't mind the registration at all. What I do mind is the remote ID that they have. It's an electronic device that broadcasts your airplane's location as well as yours to anyone with an app that wants to see it. That would be Karen, or Margaret, whatever they're calling them now. That's not safe. Several of us pilots have been assaulted and some of us injured by these people. As far as law enforcement goes, flying a toy airplane, especially in your own backyard, doesn't give probable cause or reasonable suspicion that a crime is taking place, so they don't have the right to search, even on an app, to see if you've done anything wrong. So I don't mind a transponder, something that broadcasts to other aircraft, the pilots, or to the control towers, or both, preferably both, and some sort of a communication system instead of that remote ID. I'd be all aboard with doing that for safety. That's not a problem. But RFID, that's not acceptable. That's actually a threat to my safety. As far as the airplane goes, it's almost ready to fly. I've got to finish up the instrument panel. I've got to make a couple of air intake scoops for the speed control area. I have to buy a bigger battery and then make the battery bay bigger. As soon as the foam filler gets here, I can fill in all the cuts and slots that are on the airplane from installing the wires. Then I can balance it, and I believe it's ready to fly. Let's make this air intake. Decided to make it out of a piece of paper that got rolled up and pasted together. We'll make the other one here in a second. That one was sitting there just about like that. And pick up some of the air off of that propeller too. We'll get it glued in. It's, what do we call this? Advanced Arts and Crafts. You just start by rolling it once. That'll kind of break it up a little bit. And on one side of it, you want it skinnier than the hole that you're going to be putting it into. Putting over there too. And the other end of it, you want it bigger than you need it. So start about there, and I got a little bit of paste left over. It's like kindergarten glue or whatever. Some kids want to eat it. Anyway, try to get about the same angle that I had the last time. Just about like that. And then this is going to be coming at an angle with the plane, so you don't want to cut it straight off. You want to cut it about like that. We'll trim that up a little bit more as we go. Okay, it can be, it's actually a pretty good size. It wants to come apart right away. But you got to be patient when you're making stuff like this. All right. Trim that just a little bit more. And right about there. And we'll have the intake. Let's see about that. Oh yeah, we can go a lot bigger with that. Like that, and then like that. That takes the edge off of it. Well, before I'm done with it, I'll reinforce these with a little bit of white glue. And we have little bat ears. It's a little bit weird, but it'll work. I found a different filler putty on Amazon. This was $14, and there's 473 millimeters, 16 ounce. And the Model Light filler was 250 milliliters, and they wanted $23. It wasn't rocket science. And I wanted to check this out. I used it on the other wing. I want to check that out before I actually made any video or any content at all on it. And I'm quite happy with the way it behaves. And it seems like by the feel of it, it's going to sand out pretty well too. So far, I would definitely recommend this, especially for the price difference. It's like 400% better for me. The foam filler putty is in place and is dry. It's roughed in. I used it to fill in the letters, except for those. And I've started sanding out the back of it. That section of the fuselage. You try to do this outside if you can, but it's raining right now, so here we are. The filler is okay. If you want a finer finish, I'd stick with the Model Light. But if you've got deep gouges that you need to fill in, you could use that for a base and go with the Model Light filler over top of it. The Model Light does give you a better finish, but this is so much cheaper. It'd be a shame to shove $20 worth of Model Light filler down into a crack like that. You might as well just use that stuff for this operation. I wanted to keep the instrument panel very simple, so all I really did was grab those little white dots that you get out of a hole puncher and stuck them there. This thing decided not to start. Nothing on it would work. I didn't even have an LED on the receiver. I've been messing with this for 3 days. I spent an hour on the phone with Jose at Frisky, more commonly known as Free Sky. The guy knows, he knows how to work this thing. And we had it figured out, we thought, and then when I got it home, it wouldn't work. That was just, anyway. I wiggled this speed control wire, and I don't know if you can see in there or not. The wires are too long, not really. When you bend them, they contact and it shorts out everything. Stuff was getting hot, wouldn't work. And I had this speed control and motor set up, and the Aeros Prodigy transmitter and receiver went under the wing over there. And I got that to work, and then it wouldn't work over here, even though I had that whole speed control system disconnected. Well, for whatever reason, the pan servo, although the wires were matched by color, it wouldn't work unless I flipped it upside down, which shouldn't work, but did. Sometimes things are weird. I don't know. That thing hit really hard one day, and maybe it screwed up the servo inside. I don't know. But I got everything working. Pan, tilt, video feed, everything, the motors. Oh, yeah. Those speed controls came out of the Aeros Prodigies. And they wouldn't start the motors at the same time, like I said earlier in the video. So I spent about a half an hour in Ethos trying to figure out how to get that to work. And it did. Finally. Anyway, sometimes you just got to be patient with these things. Everything at this point in time works, so I'll have to repair the damage to the fuselage that I caused by ripping open the covers that I probably shouldn't have glued shut yet. All I gotta do now is solder all 6 of them wires from the speed controls to all 6 of them blue wires in that little tiny hole. It's gonna be great. That was difficult, but as I said, I'll get it done. Everything's working. I haven't put the flaps or the spoilers program in the computer yet, but I'll get that done in a minute. And I got the wires all cleaned up. The speed controls tucked in. Very nice. I just couldn't leave those instruments blank, so I made an instrument panel. And the only thing left to do to the airplane now is to balance it out. And I don't have the other battery yet, so that's gonna have to wait. I've added another tungsten rod to the vertical stabilizer for ballast. This thing's getting heavy though. There's 8 ounces of tungsten in the back to balance it out. The battery will be here next week, and then I can finish that up. It'll be ready to fly at that point, but if it flies at all, it's going to be very, very fast because it's so heavy. And hopefully that airspeed won't cause it to flutter and tear itself apart. Also, the landing speeds are going to be quite high, and I've only technically done that like twice. The airplane is parked underneath the chair because I've got an RPM checker and there's some white paint on that prop tip, as well as I've got a white bar on the motor. And we're going to check it with this tachometer. It's going to get loud in about 3, 2, 1. Keep your fingers out of there. The new battery showed up. It's 2200 milliamp, the same kind that I had in the Aeros Prodigy. It's a little bit thinner though. I wish I hadn't cut that out for that. It would be stronger with the extra material, but it is what it is. I was able to easily make a pocket a little bit longer to accept that battery. And we should be able to plug this in and tuck the wires in just barely, which is usually the case with these airplanes. I don't want to leave that hot though. I didn't put a switch in it. I didn't have the extra room. Now all I have to do is balance it and it should be ready to fly. Oh, I forgot. I put this dowel through. A little bit of epoxy, it hasn't dried yet. And with the rubber band, that should keep the battery in the airplane during flight. So I grabbed a few framing nails. These things are about 1/4 ounce each. I got a scale down there. And 5 of these start to make it float. So we need to be just a little bit heavier than whatever 5 of these weigh. So I got 1.25 ounces. And obviously this is a lot of material. So I found a piece of tungsten. It's about 1.25 ounces, or about 35 grams. Try to remember these metric people out here. There's more of them than us. And again, that's just a little bit light, but seriously, think about it. That one piece of tungsten equals about 5 of those steel nails. So we'll add part of one of the framing nails and that tungsten to the tail, and we'll have this balanced out. I've got the airplane balanced out. I did film it, but for some reason there was like this intense strobing effect in the video. I have no idea why. Right now this thing's sitting at 3 pounds, about 1/4 ounce, maybe a half. And this is at 1410. Yeah, 1410 grams. Just do a pre-flight and wait for the weather to clear up. Let's do a systems check, make sure everything's working.
Welcome to Ethos. Throttle disabled. Shit is about to get real. Throttle not idle. Switch warning. Camera centered.
Okay. Got the goggles 3 powered up. The head tracker is powered up through the goggles. Plug in the trainer port. And center the head tracker. Let's see if I can get a signal on the area. Not until we plug in the airplane. That would explain a lot. There we go. Now it's powered up. We'll get a signal here in a second.
3 feet.
We have a signal. Excellent. 0 the altimeter. Ailerons check. Elevators check. Rudders check. Make sure your props are clear.
0 feet. Clear prop.
You better not.
Throttle disabled.
I don't know what that was all about. All right.
Minus
Now
1 foot.
center your head tracker, then
Gimbal active.
unlock the
0
gimbal,
feet.
and you'll avoid crashing the airplane into a tree like I did a while back.
Camera centered. 0 feet.
Let's check
Flaps
flaps,
down. Flaps up.
spoilerons,
Spoiler open. Flaps up.
And there's
Spoiler closed.
a momentary on the back
Spoilerons deployed. 1 foot.
for the spoilers.
Spoilerons deployed.
Kind of like that. If I go from the flaps, I can momentary that back to its
Spoilerons
flying
deployed.
position.
1 foot.
Spoilerons deployed repeats, so does flaps deployed, because I forgot the spoilerons were out one time and I crashed. And I got the altitude on repeat so that I don't forget where I'm at. I want to zero that at about 60 feet so that I don't go below the wires. Those things are really hard to see. At this point, this plane's ready for flight. It is July 31st, 2025. We're going to attempt to fly the Hogs Titan. It's about 8:30 in the morning. We'll be headed basically eastward. Pretty sure the plane's got enough power. Don't know what I'm dealing with, but I figured I could take off this way, and if I couldn't get airborne by the end of the runway, I could at least shut it down before I got to the fence. Well, after that first takeoff attempt, I spotted a small crack right about here in the tail, and I thought it would be okay, and it wasn't. Next time, I suppose I'll be a little bit more patient. Once I got it into the air, I was having trouble keeping the elevator where it should be. The tail was flexing around and it wanted to roll, and I just could not get away from that tree. I was actually coming around for an emergency landing, but well, you got to be patient. You might have noticed that I changed the tail numbers on this aircraft to number 5. I had tried once with that. Those little motors didn't really work. It got about 30 feet of level flight before it burned up. And then I tried that other styrofoam one. It was my first flight. It was a lot like this. I got it from like Hobby Town or something. Then I had the Prodigy, And I had the Prodigy 2, which I didn't fly successfully because I got confused on which way the center of gravity had to move. And this, number 5. Well, now there's a gap between those pine trees where I cut that tree down to get the Titan out of it. I'll fly through that later, just to overcome it. And there's just one more propeller added to the tree. The only one it's missing is that EDF from the first one, but I'm not putting that out here.